aliens declared humans extinct. Then the counterattack began. Part 1. The Declaration. The message traveled across the stars at the speed of light. Every planet, every space station, every ship in the galaxy received it at the same moment. The symbol of the Dominion appeared on billions of screens, a golden spiral surrounded by 7 stars. High Chancellor stood before the camera in his ceremonial robes. His gray skin stretched tight over his skull, and his 4 eyes blinked slowly as he prepared to speak. Behind him, the throne room of Prime gleamed with polished metal and precious stones. "Citizens of the Dominion," he began, his voice deep and commanding. "Today marks a great victory for all civilized species in the galaxy. The threat known as humanity has been eliminated. Earth there has been sterilized. Not a single human survives. The galaxy is finally safe." Across thousands of worlds, cheers erupted. Species that had never even met a human celebrated their death. The Dominion had spent decades spreading fear about the dangerous primates from the edge of the galaxy. They were warmongers, the propaganda said. They were violent, unpredictable, and impossible to control. They refused to submit to Dominion rule. And now they were gone. Admiral stood beside the Chancellor, her chest covered in medals and honors. She was the hero of the hour. Her 7th Fleet had carried out the attack on Earth. 12,000 warships had surrounded the blue planet and fired until the oceans boiled and the continents burned. "The operation was a complete success," reported to the Council later that day. "Orbital bombardment lasted 72 hours. We targeted every major city, every military base, every population center. Radiation levels make the surface uninhabitable. There are no survivors." The council members nodded with satisfaction. One of them, a tall being with tentacles instead of arms, leaned forward. "And what of their colonies, their space stations?" "All destroyed," confirmed. "We tracked down every human vessel, every outpost. Nothing remains." But Admiral was wrong. Deep beneath the mountains of what was once Korea, a bunker existed that no alien scanner had ever detected. It was called Sanctuary 7, and it had been built in secret decades ago by engineers who understood that humanity might one day face extinction. The bunker reached 3 kilometers into solid rock. It had its own power generators, water recycling systems, and underground farms. It could support 15,000 people for 50 years without any contact with the surface. When the bombs fell, 12,000 souls huddled in the darkness and prayed. Commander Park had been a naval officer before the invasion. She was 42 years old, with short black hair turning gray at the temples and eyes that had seen too much death. When the old bunker commander died of a heart attack during the bombardment, took charge. She did not ask for the responsibility. She simply saw that it needed to be done, and she did it. For the first 3 months, her job was simply keeping everyone alive and calm. The bunker was overcrowded. Food was limited. People were scared and grieving. Every single person in Sanctuary 7 had lost someone in the attack. Family, friends, entire communities wiped from existence. Lieutenant became her second in command. He was younger than her, only 31, but he had a talent for organization and logistics. Before the invasion, he had been an Army logistics officer. Now he managed food distribution, sleeping schedules, and work assignments. Without him, the bunker would have fallen into chaos. Chief Engineer was perhaps the most important person in the bunker. She was a small woman with thick glasses and oil-stained fingers, and she understood machines the way a poet understands words. She kept the generators running, the air filters working, and the water clean. She slept only 4 hours a night and spent the rest of her time fixing things that broke. On the 93rd day after the attack, finally repaired the bunker's communications array. It had been damaged during the bombardment, and she had spent months rebuilding it from salvaged parts. "Commander," she called over the internal radio, "I have something. You need to come to the communications center." arrived to find staring at a screen, her face pale. On the screen, the recording played, High Chancellor declaring humanity extinct. The message had been broadcast repeatedly across all Dominion frequencies for the past 3 months. It was being celebrated as a holiday on Dominion worlds. The Day of Purification, they called it. Watched the recording 3 times without speaking. She watched Admiral accept her Medal of Honor. She watched alien species she had never seen before raise glasses to toast humanity's death. Then she turned to, "Can we transmit on this array?" "Yes, but Commander, if we broadcast anything, they might detect us. They might come back." "I know," paused. "Can you scan for other human signals, military frequencies, emergency broadcasts, anything?" His fingers flew across the keyboard. "I can try, but the radiation interference is still heavy. The atmosphere is a mess." For 3 days they listened. The first day brought nothing but static and alien chatter. The second day was the same, but on the third day detected something, a faint signal buried in the noise, repeating on an old military emergency frequency. "It's Morse code," said her voice shaking. "It says, 'Survivors, Alps bunker, 5,300 souls awaiting contact.'" Closed her eyes. They were not alone. Over the next 2 weeks, they found more signals. A bunker in the American Rocky Mountains with 8,000 survivors. A submarine fleet hiding in the deep Pacific Ocean with 3,000 sailors and their families. A mining colony on the far side of the moon that the aliens had somehow missed, with 600 workers. Humanity was not extinct. Nearly 200,000 people had survived the apocalypse. Called a meeting of all department heads in the bunker's main hall. The room was cold and gray, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. 1,200 people packed into a space meant for 500. The rest watched on screens throughout the bunker. "You have all seen the alien broadcast," began. "They think we are dead. They are celebrating our extinction. They have already begun planning to colonize our planet." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Angry voices, frightened voices. Raised her hand for silence. "We have a choice to make. We can stay hidden. We can live in these caves for the rest of our lives, growing old in the dark while aliens walk on the ashes of our cities." She paused, looking out at the faces before her. Engineers, soldiers, teachers, children. The last of humanity. "Or," she continued, her voice growing harder, "we can make them regret what they have done. They think we are extinct. That means they are not looking for us. That gives us an advantage. Maybe the only advantage we will ever have." Lieutenant stepped forward. "What are you proposing, Commander?" Turned to face him. "I am proposing that we fight. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. We rebuild. We prepare. We connect with other survivors. And when we are ready, we remind the galaxy that humanity does not die easily." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, from somewhere in the back, someone began to clap. Others joined in. The applause grew until it echoed off the concrete walls like thunder. Did not smile. There was nothing to smile about yet, but she felt something she had not felt since the sky turned to fire, hope. Far above them, the surface of Earth was still burning. The oceans were choked with ash. The air was poison. The great cities of humanity were nothing but craters and rubble. But beneath the mountains, in the darkness, humanity was still alive. And humanity was angry. Aliens declared humans extinct. Then the counterattack began. Part 2: The Ghost Fleet. 6 months had passed since the bombs fell. The surface of Earth was still poisoned, but deep underground, humanity was changing. They were no longer refugees hiding in the dark. They were becoming something else, something dangerous. Commander Park stood in the command center of Sanctuary 7, studying a holographic map that floated in the air before her. Red dots marked human survivor colonies across the planet and in space. Green lines showed the communication networks they had established. Blue markers indicated Dominion patrol routes that had decoded from intercepted transmissions. The Pacific Fleet reports they have salvaged 3 more Dominion fighters, Lieutenant said, reading from a tablet. That brings our total to 47 operational alien craft. What about the shield generator project? Asked. Chief says she will have a working prototype within 2 weeks. She has fully decoded the alien technology. We can now build our own. Nodded slowly. This was the key to everything. Human weapons could not penetrate Dominion shields, but if they could build their own shields the enemy would not expect, the game would change. In her workshop deep in the bunker, was surrounded by alien machinery torn apart piece by piece. She had not slept in 30 hours, but her eyes were bright with excitement. On her workbench sat a glowing sphere the size of a basketball. It hummed with energy. "Beautiful, is it not?" she said to the young pilot standing beside her. "The Dominion has used this technology for centuries. They think they are the only ones who understand it. They are wrong." Was 23 years old, one of the youngest survivors in the bunker. Before the invasion, he had been a flight student, just months away from getting his pilot license. Now he was learning to fly spacecraft that came from another star system. "How does it work?" he asked. Picked up the sphere carefully. "It creates a field of compressed space around the ship. Energy weapons hit the field and get scattered. Physical projectiles get slowed down. It is not perfect, enough firepower can still break through, but it gives us a chance." She handed the sphere to. "Take this to the workshop in Section C. Tell them to begin installation on the first captured fighter. I want that ship combat ready by the end of the week." Nodded and hurried away. He moved through the bunker's narrow corridors, passing hundreds of people who were all working toward the same goal. Some were manufacturing weapons. Others were training for combat. Children sat in makeshift classrooms, learning mathematics and science, because humanity would need engineers and scientists to rebuild. The bunker had transformed from a shelter into a war factory. 3 weeks later, launched Operation Phantom. The target was a small Dominion supply station at the edge of the solar system. It was lightly guarded, just a handful of alien soldiers protecting a depot of fuel, food, and spare parts. The Dominion did not expect any trouble. After all, the humans were extinct. Led the assault team personally. 12 soldiers in stolen Dominion armor, flying a captured transport ship. They approached the station broadcasting fake identification codes that had created. "Unidentified vessel, state your purpose," the station commander demanded over the radio. Answered in the Dominion language which he had spent months learning. "Supply inspection, Chancellor's orders, preparing for colonization fleet." There was a pause, then proceed to docking bay 3. The transport landed smoothly. The airlock opened, and 12 humans with alien weapons poured out before anyone could react. The battle was over in 4 minutes. The station's crew never had a chance. They had been trained to fight enemies who announced themselves, who followed rules of engagement, who valued their own lives. They had not been trained to fight humans. Stood in the station's control room, stepping over the bodies of alien guards. He felt no satisfaction, no joy, just cold determination. These beings had burned his world. They had killed billions of his people, and now they would pay. "All clear," he reported over the radio. "Station secured, beginning resource transfer." Over the next 6 hours, the team stripped the station of everything useful. Fuel cells, weapons, medical supplies, computer cores. They loaded it all onto the transport and 2 cargo ships they found in the hangar. Then they destroyed the station and left no witnesses. When they returned to Earth, they were greeted as heroes, but was already planning the next mission, and the one after that. Over the following months, the Ghost Fleet grew. Every raid brought more ships, more weapons, more resources. Human engineers modified the captured vessels, adding human technology to alien designs. The result was something new, ships that were faster, more agile, and deadlier than anything either species had built before. Far away on Prime, Admiral was beginning to notice strange patterns in her reports. Supply stations going offline, ships disappearing without distress calls, equipment shortages appearing across the outer colonies. She brought her concerns to the military council. "Something is wrong," she said. "We are losing too many resources, too many unexplained incidents." The council dismissed her worries. "Equipment malfunctions," one admiral said. "Poor record-keeping," suggested another. "The outer colonies have always been poorly managed." But the pattern began. "There is no pattern," High Chancellor interrupted, his 4 eyes fixed on her with cold annoyance. "The humans are dead, Admiral. You killed them yourself, unless you are suggesting that your glorious victory was somehow incomplete." Fell silent. She knew better than to argue with the Chancellor, but as she left the council chamber, she could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Back on Earth was meeting with the leaders of the other survivor colonies. The communication was difficult. They could only use tight beam transmissions to avoid detection, but they had established a unified command structure. "We have 73 combat-capable ships," reported. "Enough firepower to challenge a small Dominion patrol fleet." "It is not enough," said Admiral O, commander of the Pacific Submarine Fleet. His face flickered on the holographic display. "The Dominion has thousands of warships. We cannot win a direct confrontation." "We do not need to win," replied. "Not yet. We need to survive, we need to grow, and we need information." She turned to tell them about the communications hub. Stepped forward. "Our scouts have identified a Dominion communications relay station near Jupiter. It handles all military traffic for this sector. If we capture it intact, we can monitor their entire command network." The other commanders exchanged glances. It was risky. The station would be better defended than the supply depots they had raided before. "The reward is worth the risk," said. "We need to know their plans, we need to know their weaknesses, and most importantly, we need to know when they are coming back." The vote was unanimous. Operation Shadow would launch in 2 weeks. Was assigned to the assault team. He had proven himself as a pilot, completing 12 successful missions without a single loss. But this mission would be different. This time, they were not raiding a poorly defended depot. This time, they were attacking a military installation. The night before the launch, he sat alone in the hangar bay, staring at his fighter. It was a strange hybrid, alien hull, human weapons, a cockpit modified to fit human hands. He had named it Phoenix, after the mythical bird that rose from ashes. Found him there. She sat down beside him without speaking. "I am scared," admitted quietly. "I have never been in a real battle before." Nodded. "Fear is normal. Fear keeps you alive. The trick is to not let it control you." "How do you do that?" She thought for a moment. "I think about what we are fighting for, not revenge. Revenge is empty. I think about the children in the bunker. I think about the future they deserve. A future where they do not have to hide underground like animals." Looked at her. "Do you think we can really win against an empire that controls thousands of worlds?" Smiled slightly. "The Dominion thinks we are extinct. They think they have nothing to fear. That is their greatest weakness, and it will be their downfall." She stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Get some sleep, pilot. Tomorrow we remind the galaxy that humanity is still alive." Watched her go. Then he looked back at his fighter, at the name Phoenix painted on its side. Rising from ashes. That was what they were doing. That was what they would keep doing until the galaxy understood. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was just getting started. Aliens declared humans extinct. Then the counterattack began. Part 3: The Revelation. 1 year after the destruction of Earth, the Dominion colonization fleet arrived. 1,500 ships carried millions of settlers, construction equipment, and terraforming machines. They came to claim a dead world and remake it in their image. Admiral commanded the fleet from her flagship, the Eternal Victory. She stood on the bridge, watching Earth grow larger on the planet was still brown continents, gray oceans, an atmosphere thick with ash and radiation. But the Dominion scientists said it could be cleaned. In a century, it would be a thriving colony world. Beginning orbital survey, her navigation officer reported. No hostile contacts detected. Of course, there were no hostile contacts. There was no one left to fight, but something in's gut told her to be careful. She had felt uneasy ever since the unexplained losses began occurring throughout the outer systems. Launch survey drones, she ordered. I want detailed scans of every continent and keep the fleet in defensive formation. Her officers exchanged confused glances. Defensive formation. Against what? But they obeyed without question. Admiral had earned her rank through decades of warfare. If she was being cautious, there was usually a reason. Far below, hidden in the ruins of what had once been great cities, human scouts watched the alien fleet arrive. They sent one message to Commander. They are here. Received the message in the command center of Sanctuary 7. She had been waiting for this moment for months. Everything they had built, everything they had sacrificed, came down to this. All ships to launch positions, she ordered calmly. Operation Resurrection begins in 30 minutes. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, the Ghost Fleet came to life. 73 human warships powered up their engines and activated their shields. They had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, inside the wreckage of destroyed space stations. Now they moved toward Earth like wolves closing in on prey. Commanded the fighter squadrons from his ship, the Storm Crow. He had 42 pilots under his command, each one flying a hybrid fighter armed with weapons the Dominion had never seen. Human missiles, human rail guns, human fury. All squadrons check in, he said over the radio. One by one, the pilots responded. Was leading Phoenix Squadron. Beside him flew 11 other young pilots, all of them survivors who had lost everything to the Dominion. Phoenix Squadron ready, reported. His voice was steady. He was not scared anymore. He was angry. Aboard the Eternal Victory, Admiral was reviewing survey data when the first alarm sounded. Contact, her sensor officer shouted. Multiple contacts appearing across all sectors. Spun toward her 4 eyes widened in shock. Where there had been empty space moments before, now there were ships. Dozens of ships. They appeared out of nowhere, their stealth systems disengaging as they moved to attack positions. Impossible, she whispered. Then the communications channel crackled to life. A human voice, young and clear, spoke in perfect Dominion language. This is Communications Officer Shin of the United Remnant Command. To the Dominion colonization fleet, you are trespassing in human space. Your forces have committed genocide against our species. Your declaration of our extinction was premature. The message continued, broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in the fleet and every Dominion relay station in the sector could hear. Humanity sends its regards. Then the Ghost Fleet opened fire. The first volley was devastating. Human missiles, designed to penetrate Dominion shields, struck 3 colony ships and tore them apart. Alien vessels that had never expected to face combat scrambled to raise defenses and launch fighters. But the humans were faster. Led his squadron straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Phoenix Squadron swept past lumbering transport ships, targeting their engines and weapons. Felt his fighter shake as he dodged enemy fire and returned it with deadly accuracy. Phoenix 3, you have 2 on your tail, he shouted. I see them, came the reply. The pilot, a young woman named Lee, threw her fighter into a spinning dive. The enemy pilots tried to follow, but human reflexes were faster than alien computers expected. Came out of the spin behind her pursuers and destroyed them both. On the bridge of the Eternal Victory, Admiral fought to regain control of the battle. But the humans had planned this attack perfectly. They knew exactly where the weak points in the formation were. They knew which ships to target and which to ignore. "How is this possible?" one of her officers demanded. "The humans are extinct. We killed them all." "Obviously not," snapped. She was already calculating options. The colonization fleet was not designed for combat. They had warships for escort, but not enough to fight off an organized attack. "Signal the transports to retreat," she ordered. "All combat vessels form a defensive line. Protect the civilian ships." But it was too late for many of them. The humans fought with a ferocity the Dominion had never seen. They did not retreat when outnumbered. They did not surrender when damaged. They fought until their ships were destroyed, and sometimes they kept fighting even then, ramming crippled vessels into enemy formations rather than allowing capture. Commander directed the battle from her flagship, the Resurrection. It was the largest ship in the Ghost Fleet, a Dominion cruiser that had been captured and modified beyond recognition. She watched the tactical display, issuing orders with cold precision. "Third Wing, concentrate fire on the escort carriers. Second Wing, intercept those fighters before they reach our bombers. The flagship is trying to retreat. Cut off their escape route." "Understood, Commander," replied. His squadron swept around the battle, catching the Eternal Victory as it tried to break away from the fight. Human rail guns hammered at the flagship's shields until they collapsed. Then the missiles came, striking the hull and tearing through armor. The Eternal Victory was crippled. Its engines were destroyed. Its weapons were offline. It drifted helplessly as human ships surrounded it. "Admiral, we are being hailed," the communications officer reported. "They are demanding our surrender." Stared at through the smoke and sparks on her damaged bridge, she could see human ships closing in. Ships crewed by beings she had been told were dead. Beings she had personally helped to kill. "How many civilian ships escaped?" she asked quietly. "Less than half, Admiral." She closed her eyes. Thousands of colonists dead, because she had believed the humans were truly gone, because she had not listened to her own instincts. "Tell them we surrender," she said. The Battle of Earth was over in 3 hours. The colonization fleet was destroyed. 47 Dominion warships were captured or destroyed. The Ghost Fleet lost only 11 vessels. But the battle was just the beginning. Shin sat at her communication station, broadcasting the recording of the battle across every frequency she could reach. The footage spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had celebrated humanity's extinction now watched in stunned silence as human ships tore through a Dominion fleet. On Prime, High Chancellor received the news in his throne room. He watched the recording 3 times, his 4 eyes narrowing with each viewing. "This is a trick," he said finally. "Computer-generated propaganda. The humans are dead." His advisors exchanged nervous glances. They had all seen the footage. They had all heard his voice, speaking clearly and calmly as missiles flew around her. "With respect, Chancellor," one advisor said carefully, "the footage appears to be authentic, and we have lost contact with the colonization fleet." Slammed his fist on the arm of his throne. "Then find them, destroy them. I want every ship, every soldier, every resource devoted to wiping out these survivors. They cannot be allowed to exist." He turned to face his council, his gray face twisted with rage. "Mobilize the entire fleet, 10,000 warships. We will not make the same mistake twice. This time, we will make certain humanity is truly extinct." The council bowed and hurried to obey. Far away, in orbit around Earth, Commander watched the news reports flooding in from across the galaxy. She saw the fear in alien broadcasts. She saw species that had been conquered by the Dominion celebrating humanity's survival. She saw the cracks beginning to form in the Dominion's empire. Admiral was brought to her in chains. The alien woman stood tall despite her restraints, her 4 eyes meeting gaze without flinching. "You fought well," said. "I underestimated your species. I will not make that mistake again." Studied her prisoner for a long moment. "No," she agreed. "You will not, because you are going to help us." Eyes widened. "You expect me to betray my people?" "I expect you to make a choice," replied. "Your chancellor is about to send 10,000 warships to finish what he started. Millions more will die on both sides. You can help us prevent that, or you can watch from a prison cell while your empire burns." She leaned closer. "The Dominion declared us extinct. They celebrated our death. They planned to erase every trace of our existence from the galaxy. You helped them do that. Now you have a chance to help make things right." Was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" Smiled grimly. "Everything you know, every secret, every weakness, every way to defeat the fleet that is coming to destroy us." The galaxy had changed in a single day. The humans were back, and they were just getting started. Aliens declared humans extinct. Then the counterattack began. Part 4: The Alliance. Commander knew the truth. Humanity could not win this war alone. 73 ships against 10,000. 200,000 survivors against an empire that controlled 1,000 worlds. The mathematics were simple and brutal. They needed allies. For 300 years, the Dominion had conquered and enslaved dozens of species across the galaxy. Some had been absorbed peacefully through treaties and trade agreements. Others had been broken through war and occupation. All of them served the Dominion now, their cultures suppressed, their freedoms stripped away. But not all of them were happy about it. Called Ambassador Myra to her office. Myra had been a diplomat before the invasion, representing Earth in the early negotiations with the Dominion. Those negotiations had failed. The Dominion wanted submission, not partnership. But Myra had learned something valuable during those failed talks. She had learned which species hated the Dominion most. The Myra said, pointing to a star map. "Species conquered 2 centuries ago. They have massive populations and industrial capacity, but the Dominion keeps them as laborers. They build ships but are not allowed to crew them." She moved her finger across the map. "The aquatic beings from a water world. The Dominion drained their oceans for resources. They have been planning rebellion for decades but lack the military strength to succeed." "And these?" asked, pointing to a cluster of stars at the edge of the map. "The silicon-based life forms, very old, very patient. They were among the first species the Dominion conquered. Their archives contain star maps and knowledge going back millions of years. The Dominion does not trust them, keeps them isolated." Studied the map carefully. "Can we reach them without being detected?" "It will be dangerous. The Dominion monitors all communication channels. We will need to send emissaries in person." "Then we send emissaries." Myra traveled to the aboard a small, fast ship. She went alone except for a pilot and a translator device. The journey took 3 weeks through territory crawling with Dominion patrols. The Hive Queen received her in a vast underground chamber lit by bioluminescent fungi. The Queen was enormous. Her body filled half the chamber, surrounded by thousands of smaller workers and warriors. Her compound eyes studied Myra with ancient intelligence. "Human," the Queen said through the translator, "we were told your kind was extinct." "The Dominion tells many lies," Myra replied. She stood straight, showing no fear, the respected strength. "They told you that your people would be treated as partners. Instead, they made you slaves." The Queen's mandibles clicked together. "You are bold, little creature. Why should we trust you? Why should we risk everything for a species we barely know?" Myra reached into her bag and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared, the recording of the Battle of Earth. The Queen watched as human ships destroyed a Dominion fleet. Her compound eyes flickered with something that might have been hope. "We are not asking for trust," Myra said. "We are asking for partnership. The Dominion called us extinct, just as they call your people expendable. Together, we can prove them wrong on both counts." The Queen was silent for a long time. Around her, thousands of warriors stood motionless, waiting for her decision. "The Dominion has oppressed my people for 200 years," she finally said. "We have dreamed of freedom but never believed it possible. You have shown us that the impossible can happen." She rose slightly, her massive body shifting. "They will join your alliance. Our workers will build your ships. Our warriors will fight beside your soldiers." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Though their planet still from Dominion resource extraction pledged their industrial capacity and their hatred. The ancient and calculating offered something even more valuable: detailed maps of every Dominion military installation, patrol route, and defensive weakness. They had been collecting this information for centuries, waiting for the right moment. Back on Earth, the Alliance began to take shape. Ships arrived from a dozen worlds, crewed by beings who had never seen a human before but who shared a common enemy. The underground bunkers expanded to accommodate alien engineers working alongside human technicians. Meanwhile, Admiral sat in her cell aboard the Resurrection. Security Chief Hand visited her every day, bringing meals and sometimes conversation. He was a quiet man with watchful eyes and a scar across his left cheek from a battle during the invasion. At first, refused to speak to him. She sat in silence, eating the food he brought and staring at the wall. But as days passed, she began to respond to his questions. "Why do you not hate me?" she asked one evening. "I destroyed your world. I killed millions of your people." Considered the question carefully. "I do hate what you did," he said finally. "But hatred alone does not win wars. Commander believes you can help us. I trust her judgment." "Even if I wanted to help, what could I offer? I am a prisoner. My people consider me dead or worse, a traitor captured by the enemy." "You know things," replied. "Fleet movements, defense codes, the Chancellor's strategies. Your knowledge could save millions of lives on both sides." Shook her head. "If I betray the Dominion, my family will suffer, my children, my parents. The Chancellor does not forgive traitors." Sat down across from her, his expression softened slightly. "I had a family too, a wife, a daughter. They did not make it to the bunkers in time." He paused, and for a moment his careful control slipped, could see the grief beneath. "I understand what it means to lose everything. I would not ask you to risk your family if there was another way." They sat in silence for a long time, then spoke again. "There are resistance movements within the Dominion, officers who disagree with the Chancellor's policies. If we could contact them, arrange safe passage for my family." "Tell me more." Over the following weeks, shared everything: fleet positions, patrol schedules, communication codes, and the names of officers who might defect. She told them about the Dominion's greatest weakness: its arrogance. The Chancellor believed so completely in Dominion superiority that he could not imagine defeat. He would attack with overwhelming force, expecting the humans to crumble. He would not prepare for a real fight. But the real breakthrough came when revealed the existence of the Dominion's master defense network. Every warship, every space station, every planetary defense system was connected through a single encrypted network controlled from Prime. "The network has explained to and her command staff, an override code that can shut down defenses across entire sectors. It was created centuries ago as a safeguard against rebellion. Only the Chancellor and his most trusted admirals know the codes." "Do you know them?" asked. Hesitated. "I know part of the code. My former mentor, Admiral, knows the rest. He is stationed at the defense perimeter, if we could contact him." "Is he sympathetic to our cause?" "He is sympathetic to ending the war without more unnecessary death. The Chancellor's obsession with destroying humanity is costing the Dominion dearly. Many in the military believe resources would be better spent elsewhere." nodded slowly. Begin planning a diplomatic mission to Admiral. I want you to study the defense network, find every vulnerability. As her officers left to carry out their orders, turned back to, thank you for this information. It may save countless lives. Met her gaze. I betrayed my people to help you. When this is over, I will be hated by both sides. Perhaps, agreed. Or perhaps you will be remembered as the one who stopped a genocide. History is written by survivors. Let us focus on surviving first. 3 months later, the human alliance was ready. Ships from a dozen species gathered in orbit around Earth. Carriers filled with warriors. Industrial vessels converted into warships. Human cruisers bristling with weapons. And at the center of the fleet, the Resurrection, now serving as the Alliance flagship, stood on the bridge, looking out at the assembled fleet. Beside her stood Myra, and behind them, watching quietly, stood, no longer a prisoner but not quite a member of the crew either. Intelligence reports the Dominion fleet is 3 days away, reported. 10,000 ships, as expected. The Chancellor is leading them personally. Nodded. Then we do not wait for them to come to us. We take the fight to them. She turned to face her command staff. Operation Retribution begins in 12 hours. All ships to battle stations. She paused, looking around at the beings who had come together for this moment. Humans, species that had never worked together before, united against a common enemy. They declared humanity extinct, she said quietly. They called us animals, primitives, a threat to be eliminated. They were wrong, and tomorrow we are going to prove it. She straightened her uniform and spoke her final order before the battle. Prepare for jump, we are going to prime. Aliens declared humans extinct. Then the counterattack began. Part 5, the counterattack. The Battle of Prime would be remembered for 1,000 years. 3,000 Alliance ships jumped into the heart of the Dominion. They appeared in a sphere around the, weapons hot and shields raised. For a moment, everything was still. The Dominion defenders stared at their screens in disbelief. Then the sky above Prime erupted in fire. Commander stood on the bridge of the Resurrection, watching the tactical display light up with enemy contacts. The Dominion fleet was larger than expected, 12,000 ships scrambling to defensive positions. But the Alliance had advantages the enemy did not understand. Transmit the override codes, she ordered. Fingers flew across her console. The codes had provided, combined with the sequence obtained from Admiral during a secret meeting, created a master key to the Dominion's defense network. One by one, orbital platforms went dark. Shield generators failed. Weapons systems locked up. Planetary shields are down, reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. 60% of orbital defenses are offline. All ships engage, commanded. The battle began. Led the fighter squadrons into the chaos. His Storm Crow cut through a formation of Dominion interceptors, rail guns firing in precise bursts. Around him, Phoenix Squadron followed his lead. Had become one of the best pilots in the fleet, his reflexes honed by a year of combat. Phoenix 3, take out the carrier's engines, ordered. Phoenix 5 through 8, cover him. The squadron worked together like a single organism, each pilot knowing instinctively where the others would be. They had trained together, fought together, bled together. The Dominion pilots, despite their superior numbers, could not match their coordination. On the surface of Prime, millions of civilians watched the sky burn. They had been told humanity was extinct. They had been told the Dominion was invincible. Now they saw Alliance ships breaking through their defenses, and they began to understand that everything they had been told was a lie. High Chancellor commanded his forces from the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Authority. It was the largest warship ever built, bristling with weapons that could destroy a small moon. But even the Divine Authority was struggling against the Alliance assault. "How is this happening?" demanded. "We outnumber them 4-1. His officers had no answers. The humans fought without regard for their own survival. Damaged ships continued attacking instead of retreating. Pilots rammed their fighters into enemy vessels rather than surrendering. And their alien allies, species the Dominion had conquered and enslaved for centuries, fought with the fury of beings who had nothing left to lose. The warriors were everywhere. Their ships were simple, almost primitive compared to Dominion technology, but there were thousands of them, and they did not fear death. Their hive mind allowed them to coordinate attacks across the entire battlefield, overwhelming Dominion formations with sheer numbers and ferocity. Despite being water breathers fighting in the vacuum of space, proved unexpectedly effective. Their ships were tough and heavily armored, designed to withstand the crushing pressures of their ocean. Dominion weapons that should have torn them apart barely scratched their hulls. And the ancient and patient provided something even more valuable than firepower. Their million-year-old star maps showed hidden routes through the system, paths that allowed alliance ships to appear behind enemy formations without warning. Directed the battle with cold precision. She saw patterns in the chaos, opportunities that others missed. When a gap opened in the Dominion defensive line, she sent squadrons through it to strike at the flagship directly. "Commander, the divine authority is turning to engage us," reported. Looked at the tactical display. The Chancellor's flagship was massive, its weapons powerful enough to destroy the Resurrection in a single volley, but it was also slow and overconfident. "Signal all capital ships to concentrate fire on the flagship's engines," she ordered. "We do not need to destroy it, we just need to cripple it." The Alliance fleet responded. Hundreds of ships targeted the divine authority, hammering at its shields from every direction. The flagship's defenses held for nearly an hour, but eventually they began to fail. One engine exploded, then another. The massive ship slowed, then stopped, drifting helplessly. "Prepare boarding parties," commanded. Led the assault team personally. He had volunteered for this mission and had not tried to stop him. Some battles had to be fought face to face. The boarding craft cut through the flagship's hull and disgorged human soldiers into the corridors. The fighting was brutal and close, no room for tactics, only determination and skill. Moved through the ship like a ghost, his weapon never missing its target. They found in his throne room, surrounded by his personal guards. The guards fought fiercely, but they were no match for humans who had survived the extinction of their species. One by one, they fell. Stood before the Chancellor, his weapon pointed at the alien's chest. His 4 eyes blazed with hatred and disbelief. "You should be dead," the Chancellor hissed. "Your entire species should be dead." "We get that a lot," replied calmly. The door behind him opened and walked in. She had left the bridge in capable hands to witness this moment personally. Behind her came, her expression unreadable. Saw the former admiral and his face twisted with rage. "Traitor, you gave them our codes." "I gave them a chance to end this war without more unnecessary death," replied. "You could have had peace. Instead, you chose genocide. This is the result." Stepped forward, placing herself between and her people. The Chancellor was unarmed now, his guards dead, his empire crumbling around him. But he still looked at her with contempt. "You think you have won," he said. "Kill me and another will take my place. The Dominion will never stop hunting your kind. You are a disease to be eradicated." Regarded him for a long moment. "No," she said finally. "We are not a disease, we are a reminder." She gestured to, who secured the Chancellor's hands with restraints. A reminder that no empire lasts forever. A reminder that even the weakest species can rise up against tyranny. And a reminder that when you try to destroy someone, you should make sure they are actually dead. Outside, the battle was ending. The Dominion fleet, seeing their flagship captured and their Chancellor defeated, began to surrender in growing numbers. Alliance ships moved through the wreckage, accepting surrenders and rescuing survivors from damaged vessels. The war was not over. There would be negotiations, rebuilding, and conflicts that would take decades to resolve. But the Dominion's power was broken. The galaxy would never be the same. 1 month later, representatives from 17 species gathered on Earth to sign the Treaty of New Sol. The document established the Galactic Alliance, a new government based on principles of equality and mutual respect. Humanity, once nearly extinct, was now a founding member. Admiral, pardoned for her role in ending the war, was appointed as the first ambassador of peace. Her job was to help former Dominion worlds transition to independence, to prevent the chaos that could follow the collapse of an empire. Was promoted to admiral and given command of the Alliance Defense Fleet. Became his executive officer, the young pilot having proven himself 1,000 times over in the battles that followed. Was appointed chief science officer of the Alliance, her genius recognized by species across the galaxy. Ambassador Myra traveled to distant worlds, building relationships with species humanity had never encountered before. The galaxy was vast, and there was much work to be done. And Commander Park, she refused every political position offered to her. She had fought for survival, not for power. When the ceremonies were finished and the treaties signed, she quietly returned to Earth. The planet was still healing. The oceans were slowly clearing. The first green shoots were appearing on the scorched continents. In 100 years, Earth would be beautiful again. But for now, it was enough to simply be alive. Stood on the shores of Korea, watching the sun rise over the water. The sky was still gray with ash, but she could see hints of blue breaking through. Behind her, the entrance to Sanctuary 7 was marked by a simple memorial, 12,000 names carved in stone, the survivors who had refused to die. Found her there as she knew he would. He had resigned his commission and followed her back to Earth. Neither of them had spoken about what they were to each other now. There had not been time during the war. There had only been survival. He stood beside her in silence, watching the waves roll against the shore. "What now?" he asked finally. Considered the question. For so long, her only goal had been survival. Fight, survive, fight again. But that part of her life was over. A new chapter was beginning. "We rebuild," she said. "We plant crops, we raise children. We remember what we lost and we make sure it never happens again." She looked at him and for the first time in years she smiled. "We live, that is what we do now, we live." Above them, the sky continued to clear. Somewhere among the stars, the Galactic Alliance was taking shape, forged from the ashes of war and the determination of beings who refused to surrender. Humans worked alongside, and dozens of other species, building something new. The Dominion had declared humanity extinct. They had celebrated its destruction. They had planned to erase every trace of its existence from the galaxy. They had been wrong. Humanity had survived, humanity had fought back, and humanity had won. Not because they were stronger or smarter or more advanced than their enemies, but because they refused to give up, because they found allies in unexpected places, because they turned their darkest moment into the beginning of something new. The aliens had tried to end humanity's story. Instead, they had written its greatest chapter. And this was only the beginning.